Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. FEMA panics, worker fired for illegal policies, now getting sued by Florida. When I first heard about this story, which is the FEMA worker who made the decision to not only herself, but as the supervisor, tell people working under her not to provide any assistance and to avoid homes with Trump flags, I thought to myself, okay, this is a story where it involves the individual because they should know better, but it also felt like a larger policy at FEMA. It felt like a larger way that they had told their employees, you can do this, because people that work in big organizations don't usually go and take an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to just do whatever it is that I want to do. I don't like these people politically. You voted for Trump? Okay, we're not going to help you because I don't like you. Or maybe they don't like your skin color. The diversity, equity, and inclusion concept, the equity relief that FEMA admits they're doing even on their website, causes people to become just dumber and more ridiculous. There is a certain amount of judgment that you can make when you're providing services. When you're in a supervisory position, reality is not always black and white. You've got to judge for yourself. Well, what's appropriate? What's real here? What's going on? I don't want to be negligent, but I do have some discretion here that I can use. And in the federal government, they seem to have a lot of discretion on what they can and can't do. But the inspiration to do this video today came from a tweet from Insurrection Barbie on Twitter saying this: former FEMA employee compares going to a Trump house with going to a house with vicious dogs. Now, she's not saying that the people in the Trump houses are necessarily vicious dogs. But yes, of course, if you're out in the field and you're helping people that are in trouble and you're doing your FEMA things, you can't do your FEMA thing if some vicious dog is going to attack you. So there are policies that you would have that would say, look, if there's a vicious wild animal or if there are vicious dogs that the homeowner is keeping on the property and you think you might be in danger, go the other way. Well, with the equity agenda, they just go and adopt that policy and say, okay, well, if you feel threatened in any way, just don't help those people. Skip the house. And here was my response. It was pretty well written for me, so it's easier for me and it'll be shorter to just do it like this. I said this: all these racists had to do per FEMA policy was to claim that they did not feel safe and they were allowed secretly to skip helping those people. And I say secretly, very specifically, because this makes it much worse. Not only did they not help people, they didn't tell people they were never coming to help them. And then they blocked local organizations from helping them, particularly in North Carolina. There are a lot of stories about that. So it's one thing to just skip the house and to say, you know what, we're not going to go there. But could you at least let the people know in that house, however you're going to do it, say it on local media, announce the areas that you're refusing to go to help those people, because you've got elderly people, you've got single mothers, you've got people with disabled children that are expecting that FEMA is going to come. You're being told through the media that FEMA is going to come, but you didn't know that by having a Trump sign, some people might feel threatened because you had a Trump sign or a Trump flag or whatever. As she put in her notes to her team, anyone with any Trump advertising, those people that were expecting help, that were expecting, as they should be, that FEMA would eventually get to them, never got any help from FEMA. So at least tell people you're discriminating against them. And there were rumors about this that, oh, well, Trump areas, Trump people, Republicans weren't getting the same help that other people were getting. And apparently, incredibly, because of the equity agenda at FEMA, it turned out to be true. As far as I can tell, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, is doing a great job of following up on this. Florida is suing the head of FEMA, and Florida is suing this worker. From the Daily Wire, Florida sues FEMA for conspiring to deny disaster relief to Trump supporters. The suit names FEMA Director Deanne Criswell and now fired Supervisor Marn'i Washington, who told workers to ignore Trump supporters. And you have to wonder, with this diversity, equity, and inclusion and this equity program that they're pushing at FEMA and throughout the media, are there people that are really that brainwashed to think that just because someone has a Trump flag or some kind of a Trump sticker on their car or something like that, that they're a danger, that you should just avoid those people? It's not like they would have done something like this even a couple of years ago. Now, it seems to be normalized. And that's why we've really got to get rid of this diversity, equity, and inclusion and all of this equity nonsense before it causes massive destruction throughout the country. But as this story can tell you, it's already put people's lives in danger. Florida is suing FEMA for allegedly discriminating against supporters of President-elect Donald Trump after a Daily Wire report revealed a supervisor directed relief workers in the Sunshine State to avoid homes advertising Trump. The lawsuit from Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody alleges that FEMA Director Deanne Criswell and now fired Supervisor Marn'i Washington conspired against the civil rights of Trump supporters in Lake Placid, Florida. The suit comes after whistleblowers told the Daily Wire they were directed to bypass the homes of people with Trump flags or yard signs when canvassing homes in Lake Placid to see if they qualify for hurricane assistance after Hurricane Milton. Quote, while the facts will continue to come out over the next weeks and months, it's already clear that Defendant Washington conspired with senior FEMA officials as well as those carrying out her orders to violate the civil rights of Florida citizens, according to the lawsuit. The suit cites reporting from the Daily Wire and accuses both Criswell and Washington of illegally depriving Trump supporters of federal aid. Moody, the Attorney General, filed the lawsuit Wednesday in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida for Pierce Division. Quote, hurricane season is not over, and the federal agency in charge of emergency response is embroiled in scandal, caught withholding aid from storm victims in Florida who support President Trump, according to Moody. Quote, I am taking swift legal action to find out how far this political discrimination reaches and how to make sure all Americans who fall victim to devastating storms are served, regardless of their political affiliation. And all of this divisiveness, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, the equity nonsense, this is what this leads to. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna have Democrats go try to help Democrats only, and then you're gonna have Republicans have a team of people that only help Republicans? Republicans don't act that way. Normal people don't act that way. They want to help people who are people, and no one holds it against them if they don't agree with them politically. Of course, not everybody with Trump advertising is dangerous like a vicious dog. And also, if you don't have any political advertising, if you don't support Trump or you didn't support Biden and Harris or whatever, it doesn't mean you're a vicious dog either. We're all just people here. And especially during a hurricane event, especially during a FEMA-related disaster, which I've gone through personally. I dealt with a Sandy superstorm a few years back. It was terrible. And FEMA was pretty decent to deal with, though that does go back a way. But when you're going through something like that, we're all just people. We all just try to help each other out. This is really unforgivable. The lawsuit also points to an interview Washington gave to Roland Martin, where she said that FEMA has a widespread policy of avoiding politically hostile homes. Criswell, the head of FEMA, has claimed the guidance was an isolated incident and not in accordance with FEMA policy. I don't believe any of that. Using equity for their disaster relief is FEMA policy. It's on their website. And I don't know how much these supervisors get paid, but I know when you go work for the federal government, you get paid a lot more money usually than you would normally in the private sector. I don't think this person is going to go and risk their great job with great benefits and a pension and retirement, who knows what else, to push some kind of political agenda or hateful thing that she might do without it being a culture that it's expected you would do that. In fact, she claimed in an interview that she was told, no, your job is to keep your people safe. So here's the guidance we're giving you. She did participate in this, and good people know better than to do things like this. However, it's not like she did it all on her own. FEMA is to blame, and she is to blame. And if you don't want to be held civilly and criminally responsible, because ultimately I think this is going to go criminal, I don't see why it wouldn't, then don't take the responsibility of being a supervisor in a corrupt and dangerous organization pushing political agendas that can damage people's lives. Don't be part of it if you don't want to be held responsible for what you do because of it. The claim that you were just following orders doesn't usually work out for people very well. The lawsuit went on to say this, quote, Defendant Washington says that similar conduct occurred in North Carolina and throughout areas affected by Hurricanes Helene and Milton, according to the lawsuit. Quote, and she represents that senior FEMA officials claiming not to know that the agency was discriminating against Trump supporters are promoting a lie. Attorney General Moody asked FEMA to award damages to the defendants and for the court to declare that the agency had violated the civil rights of Floridians. FEMA told the Daily Wire that it does not comment on pending litigation and pointed to a statement from Criswell condemning the guidance to skip Trump homes. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said that he backed the lawsuit and has announced that the state's Division of Emergency Management is also investigating the incident. Quote, it's unacceptable for the federal government to discriminate against Floridians who voted for Trump and especially egregious in the aftermath of a hurricane, he said, adding that he has, quote, instructed state agencies to likewise take any action necessary to investigate and ensure those who engaged in this behavior are held accountable. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Set up a hotline now? If you work for FEMA and you see they're discriminating against people politically, call this phone number so we can at least help those people instead of you. And by doing that, maybe as a whistleblower, we won't hold you criminally responsible. This has to all get cleaned out. Of course, we're getting a new administration in government, but it doesn't mean things change immediately. People do need to be held responsible for this. And even if they were being a little irresponsible and just kind of stupid and they should have known better, they really still do need to be held criminally and civilly responsible. This is an unforgivable thing that you would do to people. Here's the original story from the Daily Mail. FEMA worker Marn'i, Washington breaks silence on not helping Trump voting hurricane victims. How are you going to excuse that? I mean, that really does sound very bad. The FEMA boss, who was fired after ordering volunteers not to approach homes displaying Trump signs in Florida after Hurricane Milton, has insisted her edict was not isolated and also happened in North Carolina. It's interesting how she makes this reference of how this happened in North Carolina. What she's not doing is saying that she did this personally in North Carolina, just that she's aware that it happened in North Carolina, as if the policy was also sold on her and pushed on her by a higher person up at a larger organization that would say, look, this is the same thing we did in North Carolina. Of course, you're going to do it in Florida. So make sure you do this. This is our policy in Florida. This is why if you're going to take on a role as a supervisor, you're going to manage people, you're going to be in charge of a lot of resources, you are responsible. So if you can't handle it, when things get hot, don't take on the job. Washington was blasted publicly and lost her job after a text chain was leaked that showed her instructing colleagues to avoid houses that had Trump signs in their yards. She then told DailyMail.com she is seeking an attorney and is at risk as a result of backlash she's received. Quote, I have information that proves FEMA is lying, she said. In a podcast appearance, she went further, claiming more FEMA employees are guilty of the same bias, but that she's the only one being hung out to dry. She's the only one that got caught, and what FEMA is, of course, hoping is that she'll take the blame. They will burn her. The other guys are going to get laid off or fired or retired away anyway, and they'll get away with it. This is what her text message to employees were on how they're supposed to do their job when helping people in Lake Placid, Florida. Implement best practices. Number 1, no one goes anywhere alone. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. There are dangerous people everywhere, and no one's looking for FEMA people to get hurt or anyone else to get hurt. Number 2, avoid homes advertising Trump. Well, that is a problem. That's actually a severe problem. Number 3, practice de-escalation and preventative measures. This would be if people are arguing or whatever it is, try to de-escalate. In other words, don't yell back at people if they're yelling at you like they don't trust you, FEMA, and why didn't you help the people in North Carolina? Like, yeah, try not to have an argument. You're there to provide a service, not to get into arguments with people. Number 4, communicate and follow the rules. Well, okay, you should follow the rules and you should communicate with your supervisor, particularly if you're having a problem. Bring a towel with you tomorrow in the field. Frequent breaks and drink water. Avoid high salt diets and coffee. This is a list that she did not create on her own. FEMA has done this kind of operation before. There would be no reason for a supervisor in this situation to create their own unique list for the people they're responsible for out in the field. What you would do is take your supervisor's list that was approved at a higher level and then just copy and paste it and give it to your team. Because what are you going to do? Come up with your own rules? What if you forget to tell them about drinking water? There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And as incompetent, negligent, and ridiculous as FEMA is, it's just lazy and easy to copy and paste like this. There's no reason they wouldn't have done that. My impression is, of course, this person knew what they were doing was wrong, but they didn't stand up and say anything about it. And the reason that ultimately this kind of thing is going to happen, information is going to leak, is because whoever sees this, whoever works for the company, and they get a text that gives them an inappropriate instruction, if they don't report it, then they're part of it. Not saying that they have additional liability necessarily, but realistically, do you want to be part of something that you know is completely inappropriate? Are you going to be one of the bad people and have to live with yourself doing these kinds of inappropriate instructions? Or are you just going to send this to the Daily Wire, send this where you know it's going to get picked up, and at least you know you did the right thing? If there's nothing wrong going on here, then FEMA can explain itself. That's what you do when you're in a pressure situation like this as an employee. You report it. She went on to claim this: FEMA preaches avoidance first and then de-escalation. This is not isolated. This is a colossal event of avoidance. Washington claims this in an interview with YouTube podcaster Roland Martin. Quote, "It's not just in the state of Florida. You will find avoidance in the Carolinas," she revealed. She says she was directly following FEMA protocol when she issued the controversial directive. Now, looking at her list, it does seem to be that you are avoiding Trump homes as avoidance and then practicing de-escalation. She's guilty of doing this, but she's not the only person at FEMA responsible for this. She should not have her job. She should not have a pension. And she should be criticized for her part in all of this. Her next best move would be a witness for the prosecution, or a witness, or give evidence in any kind of additional civil lawsuits that come, and try to be on the right side of things. But she's going to have some problems in the future, legal problems, because of this behavior. She should have known better. She should have been leaking these instructions, not repeating these instructions. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.